Welcome to Like-Minded with Dr. Patrice. Each episode, we'll sit down with different types of experts and unpack the role of mental health in our day-to-day lives. In this episode, I'm joined by Alma Cooper, who is with us during her last days as the reigning Miss USA. She'll share her amazing journey to the crown, what it was like to achieve such a globally recognized accomplishment, and how her strength and drive got her through one of the most pivotal years of her life. From her early childhood years to her historic reign as the first Afro-Latina and active duty military officer to be crowned Miss USA, we'll discuss the intersection of identity, what it means to have discipline, and choosing your own self-worth over public perception. Alma is the talented multi-hyphenate, Miss USA title holder, U.S. Army First Lieutenant, Knight Hennessy Scholar, and Stanford University postgraduate student, tackling food insecurity in underrepresented communities through data science. From competing at Miss Universe to running multiple marathons to playing a public role in Army recruitment, she's traveled the country representing both the Stars and Stripes and the Crown, speaking to and motivating thousands with her story and her journey. Welcome, Alma. Okay, so before we kind of dive into everything, tell me what's going on with you right now today.
I believe that I was made for a time such as this. Also, I have experienced things in my life where I've had to stand alone to build the confidence and the courage for this moment.
Yeah. Tell me about that. What have you experienced, where you were standing alone, and was there self-doubt or,
Yeah, I would say being a woman and being a person of color at West Point was very, very challenging. And by challenging, I mean just feeling so isolated and so alone and easily with ambition and tenacity, having such a big target on your back as it was really, really a personal dig for some people to see someone else who doesn't look like them or come from their same background, vying for the same opportunities that they are, if not better.
Yeah.
And I think that builds a sense of resolve in yourself to face that amongst your peers and be like, no, I'm going to keep showing up. Because I'm also in the room and because I'm here, and you're also here, that my success does not have to conflict your success.
Yes, it doesn't negate yours. There's enough to go around.
It's not me winning is you losing.
Yes.
And so if I can stomach that, not only stomach it, but also cheer you on, I would really hope that you can do the same. And if you can't, that's a personal reflection.
Right.
And I think having the wherewithal to come to that conclusion so young. I mean, I graduated when I was 21.
Wow.
And so, I mean, from 17 all the way up to 21, continually facing that all 4 years of college, in a very challenging place.
Yeah.
I think it just made me, believe in myself so much to a degree. There's still times where you have self-doubt, but I think it's just the idea that I've done this so many other times and it's brought me to so many places that I could have never dreamed of.
Yeah.
So I'm why would I stop doing that now?
Yeah.
I
love that. I love that, but I also think sometimes when you hear about people and they're the first, and you've been the first a lot, it's there's pride and accomplishment in that, but there's also this underlying sense of loneliness.
Yes.
That's not a fun place to be.
No.
You don't want to be the first and then maybe the only for a while.
Yes.
It's not great. So how do you manage that? all of these accomplishments and all these firsts, and also being yes, but I want other people to come with me. Or I don't want anyone else to have the experience that I've had of being the only and being the first.
Yes. I like the idea of lift as you climb.
Yeah.
And so I like to work with a lot of organizations around Stanford, but then also I'm also working on a project to launch my own effort called Run With It to focus on using sport and movement as a form of equity and opportunity to bridge the gap in the Silicon Valley between people who work 2 to 3 jobs and people who own 2 to 3 homes. So
Exactly.
it's Stanford shouldn't be just this far off land for kids who live literally 10 minutes down the street.
Yes.
It should be a place where everyone understands that with hard work and effort, you too can be a part of this and continue to lift as you climb.
Yeah.
And so I personally have benefited from people who have poured into me, who are doing incredible, amazing things, but look back and say hey, here are lessons that I learned that you won't hopefully you don't have to go through if you learn them now.
Yes.
And so having people in your corner like that. And then also I would say just in being I would tell students, I spoke a lot to students like over the past year through Army recruiting, and I would talk about how like, I would say, y'all know the quote, it's lonely at the top. And everyone would go, yeah, but I'm like, but you're never like fully alone, because like when I got to the top of the mountain, I feel like in one shape of my life, when I got to Stanford and I'd won this scholarship, and I had felt so alone in my time in undergrad.
Yes.
And then I got to the top of this mountain and I started to see like other people who were on the same mountain as me. I'm like, all of us are here. There's like a lot of us who are coming from very different backgrounds, and we all have the same experience. We all climb this mountain by ourselves, but we're not alone. Like we have all met at the top, and like we want to see each other do well, because we know how hard it was to not have that.
Yes.
So I feel like that, in combination with just like a really, really good support system. Like my boyfriend, he's just been like a really, really sound foundation in my life, which again, like when I was at West Point, I had a boyfriend who was like awful.
We've all had an awful boyfriend.
He was like, he did not want to see me like get out of my shell and like blossom. And then I, like within like one of our first dates, when I was first dating Casey, he was like, I told him, I was like, I know this sounds crazy, but I would really love one day to compete at this thing called Miss USA. And he cut me off and he was like, you're going to win the whole thing.
Oh my God. And what a different experience to be with, whether it's a partner or friends or family, like people who celebrate you and like want and know that you can achieve like whatever you want, versus somebody who's like you're shining a little too bright. That doesn't, I want to feel better about myself. And that's more important than, how you are feeling about yourself. So speaking of academia, you are a graduate student at Stanford. Tell me about that whole journey, what you're studying, why it's important to you.
Yes. So I'm studying for a master's in the statistics department with a subplan in data science. So it's very different, because if you are a stats, there's like two cohorts. It's like the stats people and then the data science people. But anyways, it's something that I really love, because I remember being in high school and having to have a tutor for like calculus and really, really, really struggling with math. But again, like having people in my life who are like, Alma, you can do this. Like if you really love this, like you can do this and even go further than this.
Because you knew already then that you loved part of it, even as you were struggling.
I knew I loved math, and I grew up loving math. I grew up loving numbers, and just the idea of like telling a story through numbers like really fascinated me. And so I'm like in high school, like barely able to do my calculus homework, but like, maybe I'll be a math major, So I remember when I called my parents when I was at West Point, and I was like, I declared my major, I'm doing mathematical science. They were like, okay.
Like, we believe in you. You got
this. But also, you remember high school? Like that tutor we had to pay for?
So funny.
So I just remember that and thinking to myself, like, I don't care how hard it gets. I don't care how challenged I am by the classes. Like, I really love this stuff. And if I can make it work, like, I'm going to make it work. And it became not about like grades for me. It became like really understanding like the principles and the concepts, because I just loved it that much. And then when I got to my senior year of college, based off of your class rank at West Point, you can be asked to apply for like a number of graduate scholarships, basically. And so I was like 48th in my class. And
out of how many?
1,000.
Okay.
And so I was the only female math major in my grade.
Wow.
And so they were like, hey, you can apply for like Rhodes, Knight Hennessy, which was the Stanford scholarship. And that was really it. And I was like, me? I could not believe it.
Wow.
And I did have like a decent amount of imposter syndrome, because West Point is a predominantly like white male institution, and I really only saw like white males win these scholarships. And so it was just like, I'm not like the stomachable, like, I don't know, prototype for like a military person. And so, my pitch for saying why I should go to, a place like Stanford or a place like Oxford, like I don't really know if anyone's gonna buy it, so I just, maybe save my time.
Okay, so we were talking about imposter syndrome. Like at that time, did you believe it? Like, were you buying it, or were you kind of in the middle there?
I was kind of in the middle. I was very skeptical, because I was like I could count on like one hand the number of like brown women that I saw winning some of these scholarships, and that really was unsettling to me. And I just kind of was like, well, I don't really want to hear no. So I'm just going to tell myself no, and I'm just going to keep it pushing. But then I was like, well, I talked to some mentors of mine, and they were like, why don't be the first person to say no to yourself? And I was like, you're right.
Let someone else say it if they're going to.
So then I was like, I really started to just take on this mindset that like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, And I'm not going to be tied to it for the outcome. I'm going to be tied to it for the fact that I'm going to show myself that like, even if I do hear no, or even if I hear yes, like that does not define me. And so I think that's really where I started to live in this idea of like certain accomplishments or certain defeats or failures, like those do not define you. It's how you respond to them. And it became like a really deeply personal journey to me of like choosing schools because not because they were flashy, because I really loved them, like choosing programs, not because of like, you know, where they ranked, but because of like, again, how I would feel in them and the community that it would give me. And so I guess like when I started to make like the next round for this scholarship, I was like, oh my gosh, like not only are they like buying this thing like me, like not only like believing in me, but like they can see myself as like a contributing member to this community. And that really reshaped my mind about like academia as a whole, that like it's not just something that you take, but you give. Like you are giving to the institution as well.
Right. And how did that mindset influence what you studied? Because you studied food insecurity, which is obviously a very important topic, and I think something that people kind of know is there, but don't like have that story that you're able to tell with statistics.
Yes, I think it really helped propel like this idea, again, telling a story through numbers, because I was like, there's things that can be illuminated through data that a lot of people overlook. And so that's where I really found the niche of like health and nutrition, because I was really focused on, in undergrad, on body mass index and the Army's recruiting crisis, and just sharing that like there are different body types who are capable of doing different things. And that is something that we really should lean into, because just with the makeup of America, like we cannot have an all volunteer force and sustain that if we do not change like what we expect in body types to reflect what's currently present in this country. And I think like opening up that dialogue and like showing the numbers behind it was a really empowering feeling. But I just thought, you know, what other things are out there that I can illuminate? And so again, like food insecurity, I work in the Gardner Nutrition Lab at Stanford, and I actually just am doing a model focused on like moms and their diets when they're pregnant. And I think that's again, like a really fascinating thing, because there's not a lot of like research specifically focused on like women's health. And so being able to like shine a light on that, shine like what is needed for like growing another human being, you know, like that all I think is so beautiful. And again, it's this idea of like a North Star of service. Like what can I do to give back?
I also feel like, as someone who also like loves research and didn't think I would, there's also so importance that I think is overlooked, or maybe has historically been overlooked, of who is doing the research. And the approach that you're taking. Like that you as a woman of color, you're going to have different life experiences that's going to come through your research. And I think sometimes when the people who are doing the research on people that are not represented, there's bias. I mean, we all have bias, but it's even more so when you cannot relate to like that lived experience. So I think on that other level, like you're sharing the stories, but I feel like being able to influence the stories that are being told and the way that they're being told. You know, because I just, talking to you, I just imagine there's like empathy and like not judgment, but it's like, here's the facts, but also like, let's look at these other things that maybe we have had awareness gaps around before. And I just think it's so important. And I'm sure it's like not an easy program, but I imagine like it must be so fulfilling in that way.
Very, because I think even like, I'm like in a machine learning class right now, and you know, we talk about like AI and how, you know, there's biases like in the AI. And it's just like, you know, if this is something that is truly going to be for everyone, like it needs to reflect who everyone is.
Absolutely.
And for it to be like user friendly for everyone, like it has to reflect who everyone is. And I just think I was having a conversation about this yesterday, where I was just talking about with other women in tech about how important it is, like in these big tech companies, to not let go of like your perspective. Like just because you might be the only, like we're counting on you to bring your perspective in the room.
Please don't. Yes,
like please bring it up. Ask the questions. Show, like point out the anomalies, because you know, your voice matters. Like you being in that room, like only allows for those discussions to be had. And so I guess that's something that I've been reminding myself of as well at Stanford, is just the idea that like, because I'm in a program that maybe doesn't look like me, or I may be the only in a lot of my classes. It's this idea that like, you know, again, lifting as you climb, but like become what you cannot see. And so just like having the ability to like recognize that, and like recognize like how it sometimes can like be something that makes you uncomfortable. But like, no, like I earned my right to be here. And like, because I'm here, like I'm going to offer in the dialogue and discussion, like things that I know in my perspective.
Right. I'm going to make it matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm curious because we've talked about support systems and everything. Tell me about how you grew up and like how your parents and like your family influenced how because you've accomplished so much at such a young age.
Yeah.
Like I was not doing any of this stuff. I'm pretty sure it was like,
okay, so I would say like my mom and my dad are like really, really huge pieces of my life. I actually like posted this thing on Instagram a couple weeks ago where I was saying like, my mom didn't answer the phone, so I'm just forced to talk to my phone. And so I just started ranting to my phone about, I'm taking this class and it's really hard. But I feel like just the fact that I can call my mom, like, and whatever time of the day, and just be like, hey, like, this is something I'm going through. And I don't really know how to feel about it right now. But like, I always know I'm going to like pick myself up and I'm going to do it. Yeah. But I just need to like say it. And I think it's having people in your life who aren't just like, go, 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 go. But like, you can press on the brakes with them and they'll be like, okay, I know you feel like this right now, but I also know that you're the type of person that's going to do it anyway. Like you're going to pick yourself back up. You're going to figure it out. And so I think my mom is that all the time. Yeah. My dad is the person who also gives like the tough love, who's like, all right, kid, well, like
you had
rub
a military some dirt
dad.
On it. I had a military dad. Yet they're like, get to
and
it.
You're
Figure
like,
it out.
Oh my gosh. And I remember being like, in the second grade, and they would, we would sit on the mat and we'd talk about, what are we going to talk about? Like, what are our values in the classroom? And I'd be like, accountability.
What? It's second grade?
I'm like,
the kids were like, snack time?
Yeah. And I'm like, my dad would come to parent-teacher conference and they'd be like, yeah, I was really big on this thing, accountability, and like discipline and like all this stuff. And it's just like, that was just a really big part of my household and something that wasn't like a thing that I learned, when I got older. It was like, at a very young age, kind of conceptualizing what that looks like. Yes. And I really appreciate that now because a lot of the hard moments in my life are having to make hard decisions. Like I really make them based off of my values.
Yes.
Which again, at 23, when like I put it in perspective, if you ask anyone, like the average person, like if you have to pinpoint like certain values in your life that are really important, like I bet that would be really hard. And that it's not an easy question for everyone. It's not an easy question for me. But at the same time, when you make a habit and like make a foundation of your life, your values from a very young age, like you're always going to turn back to that.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you're describing with your parents, like that balance too, of like, okay, yes, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, and I might just be here for a moment having these feelings. And then also knowing that, like, your foundation is, like, this is what I believe in, discipline, accountability. And I will always go back to that. Sometimes I might be here for a minute, and, and then, but I know I'm going to go back to that.
Yes.
And, like, I feel like it must be such a gift to have that and to know, to allow yourself to be both, right? Because I think sometimes, especially like with people who are very high achieving, it's like you're just going, going, and like you need to get to that finish line, and the finish line keeps moving, but you're just always trying to get somewhere, like get to that next level, versus being okay with like right now, like right now where there might be some like unsettling kind of feelings, and this is just where I am today, and I don't need to rush out of those feelings, because I think like that's where the healing happens, like in allowing yourself to be a little, uncomfortable, unsettled, not knowing the answers all the time.
Right. For sure.
So, in terms of mental health and like dealing with all the pressures that you deal with, we all have our different kind of coping mechanisms, and I know running is one of yours. So tell me what running does for you, how you feel when you're running, like when you're thinking about going out for a run, when you come back, like what does that do for you in terms of like your mental health?
Yes. I feel like all throughout college, like I would use running, obviously like every day, there's this quote, like every cadet is an athlete. So like when you're at West Point, it's like a given that you should keep up with like your physical fitness and all that stuff. But I never saw that as like a chore. Okay. I felt that it was something that like, yes, there's a grade associated to it. And if you do well, like it's a great thing. But at the same time, I thought it was really beautiful that if I have a hard test, if I have a really rough day, like I just want to go outside and I just want to run. Like I just want to like go somewhere, come back, and know that in 45 minutes, in an hour, like I have processed whatever I needed to process. I've thought about that math question on my homework, like just so many different things. I've got an idea. Like I remember brainstorming my personal statement for Stanford, like on run. So it's not necessarily like I need to be alone. Like it's just the idea that when you're alone and like you're moving your body and you're in nature also, like disconnected from so much of like your phone, internet, work, like what you learn about yourself. And also the sense of like, because I've also started to run competitively, it's like, wow, like I'm literally watching myself grow in something that I love so much already. And so to know that like you're seeking like personal achievement or like, wow, like I reached a new milestone. Like it's just an all around really good feeling. And I think also I've read on social media, people talk about like, oh, like don't monetize off of your habits or things that you already like.
Wait, what do you think what does that mean
to you?
The
idea that like don't make what you call fun like your work, because then like it's gonna be hard because if you don't like it anymore or whatever. And so
you're attached to it. It's part of who you are.
I'm like, well, I already love this. Like this is like I've found running to also be like a creative outlet because of opportunities it's given me on social media, and I just being able to share something so positive also. Like, I don't know. It's just so many layers of good to me.
Well, and I think running is one of those interesting things, an exercise period. It's like sometimes, not that there's a right or wrong way to do it, but that some people will use it as a way like not to think. All I'm thinking about is like one foot in front of the other, and I've had runs and like exercise like that. And then other times you're like, okay, I'm just going to process because now this is something that I can kind of do automatically. Like I'm going to keep moving forward so I can have that time in my brain. And you said something interesting about being alone. And I'm wondering for you, because you had to do so many things and on your own in a way, and I know obviously you have a village and people lifting you up, but being the first and like being the only in so many situations, how do you know how to invite community back in? Like how do you know when, okay, I don't need to be tough right now, I can be vulnerable. Like there's people who want this for me as well. Because I think sometimes we can get in a mindset like I have to do this on my own. And people, like if there's people that don't want the best for you, sometimes that's a reality. So how do you make sure that you can like keep a village, you keep friends, you know who to trust and who to bring in?
I feel like part of it is like when I'm on my runs, I'm like, I should call so-and-so, or like I should call my mentor, like I should call Eric. Like I need to call certain people. And I feel like giving myself the time to think about that. I'm someone who believes like you shouldn't just, not that it's a lifeline, but you shouldn't just like throw the safety net out there as soon as you're like, man, I don't know what to do. And I think part of like the uncomfortability, like you talked about, is like sitting with your feelings, sitting with a decision. And then once you've like kind of formed like the beginnings of some like solution or the beginnings of some values that you want to like really draw on, like that's when you call in some like the major stakeholders in your life and you're like, okay, this is what I've already thought about. This is what I'm looking at. And like, I either want to affirm like the idea or thought that I'm on, or like, can you tell me what my blind spots are? I think having the wherewithal to invite those conversations after a little bit of thought is where I typically lean. Because I'm like, I also know that nothing really, if you just sit with it for too long, is like going to end up that well. So I'm like, maybe give me like an afternoon or so, and I'll go to a yoga class, I'll go on a run, and then like I'll call some people. But I think I've this experience, like my life so far, like it's really taught me to invite that community. Like even though there are those times where you're like, man, like I really don't know what to do, even after some of that thought, there's still people that like I acknowledge who really are really great sounding boards.
And I think there has to be that undercurrent of knowing yourself. Like when I first became a therapist, I thought I was just going to be telling people what to do all the time. Like, oh yeah, do this. Oh no, not that guy. He's terrible. And it wasn't that at all, right? It's kind of just giving people a space to kind of sit with it. Like they are the experts on their lives. Like and sometimes you need someone to talk to about whatever's going on. You need someone to hear you about it, your experiences, but not like someone to tell you what to do. And I think that the way that you invite people in kind of really shows that. I know myself, I know what I'm going through, and I know I have some like really loving, caring, smart people in my life, and I'm gonna tell them, I think this is the direction I'm going in. Like, what do you think? Or what am I missing maybe? Like what are some awareness gaps that I have, that you might be able to share with me? And I think that again, it kind of brings in what we were talking about earlier of that vulnerability, and that being able to sit with yourself, and then also, but I know who I am,
Yes.
and I'm going to do everything from this point of view.
Yes.
And I think it's just like a kind of a beautiful way to live life.
Mm-hmm.
It's also making me think, you were talking about when you were younger and seeing people, getting that crown, seeing women getting that crown, and like, what did you think that was going to feel like?
Yeah.
Well, and especially compared, you have so many accomplishments.
Yeah.
Like you could point to any of these things.
Yeah.
So like, what were you expecting to feel?
Yeah. I guess like the one thing, I mean, I would grow up, like I watched the pageant, but then I also was like so infatuated with like that moment. Like the fact that like overnight you're basically gonna like watch someone's whole life change.
Because it's a culmination of things that they've been working for, but like, we don't see it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when I like was thinking about competing, or like even when I was like in high school, I would like watch all of there's like compilation videos on YouTube, and there's like all of the like Miss USA's like winning in like the first like 10 seconds after they announce, North Dakota or whatever is winner. And like it was always so beautiful because like typically like they acknowledge like their family or they like thank God. Like there's so many things that people feel in that moment. And I remember I was talking to someone in my scholarship cohort who's from Colombia, and Colombia has like a really, really big like fan base around like pageants and like everything that goes into it. And he like came up to me and he was like, "I know you're a queen."
Oh.
And I said, "Well, yes."
Glad you noticed.
Yeah. But even like in talking to him, he was like, "Well, how did, very similar question of like, how did that moment feel?" And I brought up the fact that it was so enchanting to know that like every time you look at a camera and you see a red dot, like there's a younger version of you who is watching on the other side. And like, regardless if you make the next cut or not, top 20, top 5, whatever, like someone is like seeing themselves in you, and like that is a really beautiful feeling and like a really beautiful thing to acknowledge, because at one point I was on the other side of that screen.
Looking for someone to represent
you.
Yes.
And so I just think that like that moment is like bigger than myself. Like the fact that I got to experience that and that I got to provide that for someone, like that is bigger than me. And like I'm always grateful that I got the chance to fulfill that role.
Yes.
But even when I spoke at a school and they had played like part of my intro was them playing When I Won. And it was just really, really neat to see like in a kid's eyes, like how it must feel to like see what you see on TV.
Yes.
And then like to have me visit their school, but like in uniform, like look at like the duality of a person, and like look at what you can achieve. Like if these are the things that I care about, if you care about the same things, like maybe you could join the Army one day. Maybe you could serve your community in some unique way. Yes. Like that, I think, again, is bigger than me as an individual. I hope that has like a lasting impact beyond myself.
Absolutely.
So I guess it's just the idea that it means so many different things for so many different people. But I think I hope I would be speaking for a lot of the women that like getting to experience that like it's not just about you. Yes. Like it really isn't, because like I remember I won and I pointed immediately to my family, because I'm like, this is a dream that you all have heard me talk about for years. Like my boyfriend, we had been dating for about a year, and he's watched this whole thing come to fruition. Like
that's from that first conversation.
Exactly. So it's just like, it's so much bigger than you as an individual. Like it spans beyond yourself. And it's just like a really neat moment in history, I feel like.
Well, and speaking of, the idea of you showing up in uniform and they're seeing, you winning like Miss USA, but both your parents, you kind of followed in both of their footsteps. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I feel like one thing that my parents would always say is like, my dad would say, I never forced any of my kids into the military. And then my mom would say, pageants or whatever you wanted to do was like always going to be your choice.
Because your mom has a pageant background.
Yes. And so I feel like in acknowledging like that they both took their own paths, that they're both unique people, they have, great careers, great lives. I always have had like so much admiration for my dad's career, my mom's path through like pageantry. And it wasn't necessarily for like the accomplishments or the accolades that they won in either of those fields. It was the idea that like coming from where they came from, like from very humble beginnings, that they found a way for themselves and like look at the opportunities that they've not only opened for themselves, but for other people. Yes. I think one thing I really loved about watching my dad's career was that people didn't just see my dad as like Major Cooper or as just their boss. Like they saw him sometimes as a father figure, sometimes as someone to go to like when things were really going wrong in their life. And just knowing that people saw my dad for like how I see him, I was like, wow, like this isn't just a job. Like this isn't just a way to pay your bills. Like you can really impact someone's life. And then in my mom's case, you know, she was a migrant worker in the beet fields of Idaho from like the age of 6 or 7.
Wow.
And so for her to find a passion and a purpose, like to find a way to earn job interview skills and to learn resume building through pageants, I thought that was just like so beautiful and so inspiring that she didn't let her circumstances define what she was going to become and what she was going to do.
I just imagine like what a journey both your parents had, and what were the stories that you heard, you know, to say, I mean, you said it so casually, but like, it's not casual. You know, you started as a migrant worker and then now you're in pageants, you know, for your father, like this career where not only is he able to, you know, show his discipline and like his resolve and all of those things, but also to be like a real person for other people and to see like where there's needs and be able to fulfill that. Like that's, I think we just need to spend a little more time on it. It's a big deal. Like I just have to imagine it must have shaped you so much to know that your parents worked for everything they're given and, you know, and that they accomplished all these things and, you know, had these dreams and you got to see, you know, that it's pretty remarkable.
It really is. And so I feel like even I remember like my dad's change of command ceremony where he was a company commander and he was passing on the title to another individual, and just the way like his soldiers like really, really admired him. Like I'm, you know, 8, 9 years old, and I can just feel it in the room. Like it's just this energy when he like speaks to them and how they listen and how they lean in, and like you cannot manufacture that. And I think with just everything that I mean, when I was 6, my dad was deployed for 2 years. Okay. And so just knowing like now at 23, like how volatile and how fragile like life is and that, you know, my life could be very different based off of things that happened in those 2 years. And so just the way that he has always carried himself and like still been in touch with a lot of the soldiers that he led and served with and worked with and like were colleagues with, like that is just so admirable. Like I just really admire my dad. And when you meet him, he's such like a nonchalant, cool guy. And I'm just like, you don't know how cool you are, you know? But it's so beautiful because when I won, you know, my dad has PTSD and so he wasn't at the pageant. My sister also has special needs. So they were at home and they watched it and my mom was out with me. But I just, you know, I think one thing that a lot of people assumed was like, you know, they see a brown girl and they think, oh, well, you just don't have a dad. And I remember doing an interview and someone had said—
Can I slow you down?
Yes.
Why do you think that is what came up for you? Was that some feeling you'd had before or an assumption people had made?
It was an assumption people had made. I had done an interview and someone like had said, well, when Alma was growing up, it was just her and her mom. And I was like, whoa, no, it wasn't, babe. No, it was
Where'd
not.
you get
you
this
know?
back?
This is just an assumption. And I'm like, I think, I just, you know, I saw that and I just thought, you know, that's really a shame because, you know, my dad has played such an intricate role in my life. And, you know, I think what I really love about my family as a whole is like, I talk about like values, but I also really believe a part of those values is like, you know, the idea that I think right now in time, a lot of people like run to the light or run to the fame or run to whatever's going to get me viral, run to whatever's going to get me in the news. And my parents are like, you know, they always say you came to us this way. My parents say that they had a dream about me before I was born and they knew that you were going to be special. And they said that regardless of whatever we faced financially, whatever we were going through, we needed to provide for you because God had something planned for us and you.
Amazing.
And so when I'm like, you know, when they say that you came this way, you know, go girl, run, you know, they're like, you know, we're here for you. We are your foundation. We are your bedrock, but this is you, you know, this is your time. You're building something beautiful. And so I really admire that about my parents because again, like a lot of people, for good or for bad, like the idea to just like run to whatever would get them in the limelight. My parents are like, no, you know, like you worked for this. You worked so hard. And, but I also think like in part of that, people just, you know, assume, oh, well, you just don't have a dad. And I just think that's crazy.
I know. And I have to imagine, then there's probably like a part of you that's like wants to be like, no, look, this is my dad. Look at all these accomplishments. But then you're like, I don't need to do that for you. Like, I know the truth.
Yes.
And so like having both things there where it's like, you are way off. First of all.
Yes.
And even if I was, like, then if I didn't have a dad, what kind of assumptions are you making about me? I still worked really hard to get here. Right? It's just, I think that so many times, when we know ourselves, it's hard to like turn off like that audience of other people. Like, what do they think about what's being said? What are the assumptions they make? Do I prove them wrong here?
Right.
Or do I just continue on with my unbothered journey?
Right.
Yeah. And I think like probably especially when you're in such a public eye, like the way that you are, having to have that kind of conversation with yourself.
Yes.
Probably.
And I feel like part of what has really given me like a lot of solace and just like content is like my faith.
Yes.
I have really been like grasping to this idea of like living for an audience of one, and that like the victories have already been defined, like that this path was already written before, I even knew that it was going to become. And so I just really hold on to that, because I think that in times of like uncertainty or times of ambiguity, it's like really hard when you're in like a public facing position to like not sway your decision or sway your opinion based off what is more comfortable for the mass.
Yes.
And I think like having that resolve to understand, like, I truly do live for an audience of one, and that like my journey has already been defined, and it's, it's just waiting to be unlocked. Some of these doors are just waiting for me to open them up. But I have really, really grasped to that, because like you said, like, I'm going to continue to live my unbothered life, So, as long as I'm good with the man upstairs, I'm going to keep pushing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right. And it gives you that clarity when you are in those moments. Like, I imagine like right now could be one of those moments where other people are like, maybe not like thrilled about some of the decisions that you're making.
Yeah.
But that, you are going in the direction that you need to. Like, you know that you're doing the right thing for you. And whether other people see it or not is kind of not your problem in a way.
Yeah.
Like not that you don't care about other people, but it's not going to be enough for you to make your decisions based on that.
Correct. I can't please everybody. And I'm somebody, I talk to my boyfriend about this. I talk to my mentors about this, how, and a lot of times in good principle and like good professional principle, like, it's awesome if you can get to yes, if you can make it happen, if you can pull through for somebody, if you can squeeze somebody in, if you can do somebody a favor. I just believe that that's, good business.
Yes.
If you can do that, that it's going to come back to you tenfold. And so when I started to make decisions or realized, I can't please anyone, everyone, I just really honed in on the idea that like, in that, sometimes you just got to get to your best yes.
Yes, that's right.
I cannot make everybody's yeses. I can't do it.
And it's not your job.
No.
It's not, first of all, it's not possible. Second of all, it's not your job. But I also really appreciate the way that you said that. You said, I can't please everyone. But you didn't say, I can't win. Sometimes we can use those things interchangeably.
Right.
And you can win what makes sense for you and is best for you. And you're not going to please everyone, right? And so I just wanted to call that out, because I really appreciate there's a difference. And I think sometimes we don't recognize it, It's like, you're not saying, I can't win, so why bother? You're saying, I know I'm doing what's aligned for me. I know I'm doing what feels right in my heart.
Yes.
And you're not going to be thrilled about it, and that's okay.
Yes.
Like, I can, I think about it when, I talk to clients about like setting boundaries. It's like, you have to know your boundaries. You set them. People are not going to love it. A lot of people are not going to like it at all, but that's not your problem.
Right.
They'll come around or they won't. But you have to do what really feels right for you.
Yes.
And I think that, to me, that just like sums up so much of your journey and your experience.
Yes.
It's really beautiful.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
So thank you for sharing all this with us, Alma. Is there anything else that you want to make sure people know about you, that they understand about you, like on a deeper level?
I feel like the idea that my mentor and I talk about this a lot, in the sense that like not one asset of my life or facet like defines me.
Yes.
Me like being in the military, that does not define me. Me being Miss USA, like, and that being a chapter of my life, does not define me. Like, what defines me is like my character. And I believe that your character is both built and revealed in how you respond to adversity. And being in a very public role, and like gaining a following and like just the concept of social media itself. Like, I just
That's another
think,
conversation.
yeah, I just think that like I'm someone who will always go back to like I'm a woman of my word, and like I will always, always fall back on my character because I'm like that's all you have. At the end of the day,
that's so true.
If every bullet point on my resume was gone, like my character is what I have. And again, like I think just living a life that you can look back and say like I made decisions and I made choices that were in line with my values, like that to me above all will always be like the most important thing. And I always would say that to students as well. Like one asset or facet of your life like does not define you, and like there are going to be so many more amazing things that you do that like you wouldn't want just one moment of your life to define everything else that's going to come
if it's
after
the most
you.
Amazing moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's also just like this really deep like hope and aspiration and like confidence in myself that like I know like there is so much more to come.
Yes.
And I believe that like when I graduated high school, I believe that when I graduate from West Point, like I just know that there are so many more beautiful things to come. And like, again, I live for an audience of one. So at the end of the day, like as long as I can go to sleep and realize like I've done everything I could, like I got to my best like I'm living a life like well fulfilled.
Yes.
So
well, that kind of makes me want to talk to you a little bit about what are those thorough lines of like all these places where you've succeeded, like the pageant world, academia, in the military. Like what are the connections that you've made to tie this so much to like your journey and like going back to that foundation of like of who you are?
Yeah. One, like being really grounded, like in all of these things that are like really awesome and really cool. Like just being really, really grounded and like understanding that at the end of the day, like these are the people that matter to me. These are the voices that matter to me. And like not like selling yourself out, you know, because I think like in moments of ambiguity or uncertainty, like in the face of like taking on like a big organization or something like that, you could like sell yourself out and just be like, you know what? Well, like they're bigger than me and I'm just one person. So whatever.
That's right.
And I'm just like, no, like I know that there's people out there who know my worth and would pay for that. So anyways, I would go back to the idea of like being grounded. That's the first thing. And then from there, I would say like just having a North Star. And I have always gone back to like the North Star of service. Like, am I giving back in like what is coming to me?
Yes.
And that's why I always say like lift as you climb. So I think it's twofold. Like there's an act of like being grounded to understand like who are like my major stakeholders and like who at the end of the day, like everything else could be going awry in my life, but like who are the people that I'm really going to listen to? And then also just like having something that pulls you to keep going, which for me is like to give back and to serve.
Yeah. And I have to imagine like as you're speaking, you know, also that undercurrent of like the little Almas who are watching, you know, and that's always in the back of your mind, like not as a pressure, but kind of a responsibility, accountability, you know, going back to second grade Alma, but also like I am going to be for you what I did not see all the time.
Yes.
And all the decisions that I make, like you may not understand it, but I am showing, I am modeling what being like aligned looks like.
Correct.
You know, and I think that's such a gift.
Exactly. Like become what you cannot see.
Yes.
And so like, because like, I think there's a rarity of women in particular who are willing to like put so much faith and trust behind themselves for a decision or like a values driven moment. Like I think now more than ever, like it's really important for young girls to see that. Because I remember even like about a year ago watching like the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, and when the girls talked about like how they're like working all of these jobs and doing all of these things to afford themselves this like once in a lifetime opportunity, like what an incredible dream, but also like there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into that. And so, you know, the following season, like the girls like rally together and they say like, we are going to get paid what we deserve or we're not going to cheer. And, you know, that makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
Yes,
like with such a big organization and so much money behind it and all these people who like know how iconic these women are and like they're, you know, dubbed as like America's sweethearts. Like, you know, that's not very sweet of you. Like, no, that's real. That is real.
Well, it also requires all of us to like reflect on like what did we think was happening here and why were we okay with that?
Yes.
You know, and so that is part of the discomfort too, because it requires all of us to be like, wait, these people are working this hard and they can't afford like their basic life things.
Right.
What does that say about as a society, the things that we notice and the things that we overlook?
Right.
You know, and that's work too.
Yes.
So I think, being challenging yourself and then like allowing people to challenge themselves, I think it's such an important responsibility and such an important part of your journey.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, so much of you and like being really vulnerable and open. If people want to know what you're working on and what's going on with you, where can they find you?
Yes,
Speaking of social media.
Cooper on Instagram. Yes.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you so much.
Of course.